The other thing that I think is really interesting that's going on in the emerging world, and I'm sure that you've read a lot about this, is the development of frugal innovation. You know, very cheap, suitable for purpose products that that don't have lots of bells and whistles, that try and subtract, that try and be as simple as possible rather than as complicated as possible and as cheap as possible. And I think there has been a sense in which, you know, in the West, you know, product innovation has been about adding features, and it's not been very price sensitive in general. And I think we're going to see a wave of innovations which will be coming from the emerging world, which will be all about providing much more value for money and in a much simpler package. And I think you can really revolutionize a lot of products. And I went to, and a lot of this is driven by emerging market companies. It's also driven by rich world companies that are going into the emerging markets. I went into GE. Are you going to GE in Bangalore?
No.
Anyway, I went into companies are not very happy to let people walk around very much, but I went into GE in Bangalore and they showed me a whole series of medical devices they had, which were these just sort of huge, giant scanners, big enough for football players. They cost tens and tens of thousands of dollars, and you can press a button and it adjusts by some tiny fraction up and down and things like that. And they showed me a bed which does exactly the same thing. You have a lever and you move people up and down, which they sell for a couple of $100. And all of these many thousands of dollars, they say were completely, basically unnecessary. This is them talking about their own products, because there was lots of money around, there was lots of money in the insurance business, you know, so they just soaked up all this money. So they innovated in order to soak up this money. And I think in all sorts of areas you're going to get very sort of, like, it's called frugal innovation, very cost-conscious ways of doing things. Again, they showed me these MRI machines, which just cost a couple of $100. And I think if you start with the presupposition that what you really are going to try and do is deliver as much value as you can for as little cost as you can, you start a whole series of things in terms of making things simpler, but also in terms of redesigning your supply chain, redesigning your distribution chain. And I think if you look at a lot of the problems in the West at the moment, particularly in the US healthcare, it's all because things are much too expensive, much more expensive than they need to be. And a lot of the military could say exactly the same thing. So I think there's a real potential for this sort of frugal innovation to spread around the world. And I think it's something that's actually starting in the emerging world, and starting because people are preoccupied by reaching the bottom of the pyramid. It has like huge applications.
But in the UK and the US, we can do that.
Yeah.
If we grab a hold of the management philosophy.
Yes.
Theoretically.
You can follow, and as I say, you know, one of the leaders in this is GE. It doesn't take, it's not impossible for companies to do it. They're very reluctant to do it because it cuts their profit margins. But I think they're going to be forced to do it by emerging market companies which are going to do it naturally.